Hello and welcome to this episode of the Business Spotlight. Today we are joined by Dorian from FBSE Finance Limited. Hi, Dorian.
Hi, nice to
Great
meet
to
you.
have you on the show today.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. So, for those of you joining the Business Spotlight for the first time, what is it? So, the Business Spotlight, it's a place for us to find out a bit more about business, and today a bit more about Dorian's business, and to find out about the trials, the tribulations, the highs and lows of running a business. So, if you're thinking about getting into business, or if you're already on that entrepreneurship journey, you're in the right place. So, Dorian, if you could just kick things off for us, please, by letting the audience know who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. So my name's Dorian Nineberg. I'm the managing director of FBSE Finance Limited, and I happen to also be the sole owner of the business. I've been involved in a lot of different businesses, which may come out during the chat today. But I've been in the finance business for nearly 30 years, but FBSE Finance since about 2009, so nearly 15 years now.
Wow, 15 years. That's amazing. Well, congratulations first and foremost. I mean, I know any business that's been running for that period of time is clearly doing something right, Dorian.
That's a very good point. I agree. Agree. Not easy to survive.
So, I mean, what would you say if you was to encapsulate what it is that makes you different or stand out from anybody else out there doing something similar, what would it be?
Okay, so the bridging finance industry has grown enormously. I mean, I was reading some stats before where I think it's estimated the industry has got like an 11 billion pounds is lent in that industry. I have to say we are a very tiny little player in it, but we're in so to in this business, you've either got to be a massive player or I think you've got to be a niche player. So we're a very small niche player. And by that, as you rightly say, there are various areas where you look at and people decide whether or not they're going to use one bridging finance company or another. The rate is obviously very important. The amount that you will loan is very important. And the flexibility in your underwriting is very important. So we tend to focus on the smaller loans where we do loans from 50,000 to say £500,000. We focus on a very wide category of property. So all the loans are secured on property, but whereas a lot of the market might just be secured on residential property, which is something we do, we also lend on commercial property. We would lend on unusual assets such as farms, care homes, caravan parks. We also look at maybe borrowers who've got impaired credit rather than a perfect credit history.
Yeah.
And we, like a lot of people would say, we've got a very personal service. We're very driven to try and work with the borrowers to identify early on whether or not their loan is something which is going to work for us and also whether we're the right company for them, because time is very important. So we don't want to waste our time and we don't want to waste their time. And there's also some costs involved in this business where for practically anyone, you have to spend money on a valuation and legal fees. And we're very upfront. We always call it upfront underwriting. So we would say to a lot of people or brokers who tend to introduce the business, look, this deal's not for us and we're not sure it works. We'd rather not people waste their time or their money in that respect. So that gives you a bit of a feel as to where we are. We try and be a bit different.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic share. And I'm liking that upfront underwriting. I like that. That's a
You like
great
that one?
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of our selling points.
So, well, thank you for that. And I know you did mention earlier regarding some of your other businesses that you've run.
Mm.
So, I mean, if you could sort of take us back a little bit then,
Okay.
just to sort of, some of the things that you've done, but also what made you start the business sort of 15 years ago, and then just give us a bit of a, I don't know, like a whistle stop tour of the
Okay,
business.
I'll try and be quick because there's quite a bit to pack in here. So
Yeah.
I started off. I'm a qualified chartered accountant.
Yeah.
Could have stayed in practice, but didn't want to do that for various reasons. And I got an opportunity to get into business, but in a completely different area in my 20s, mid-20s. So I was quite young. So I kind of went into the security industry where I was involved in the cash in transit business, which is like a Securicor type operation. Was involved in a business there, minor shareholder, sold that. Then I started a business providing contract security guards with a partner. We did amazingly well in London. And in my mid-30s, we sold out and did very well. And then I got involved in the finance business, which I knew some people were in it, saw an opportunity, and that's kind of how I got involved in that. I thought there was an opportunity. I started working with someone who had a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge to learn the business, and we built a business up. And he then brought me out of that, and then I went on my own. I felt I was in a position and had enough knowledge and experience. And there's a lot of areas in this finance market, and the bridging space was opening up. I was working in a different area of it, and I saw an opportunity. That was actually with a different company at the time, but that's how I kind of started in the finance business.
Wow. Okay. Well, that sounds like a journey just in itself
Yeah,
there.
that's a very quick synopsis. There's a lot of meat on the bone in there, I can
Yeah, I
assure
can imagine there is. Well, thank you very much for sharing that
you.
information. So then when you sort of set the business up,
Yeah.
that was what, 15 years ago, you say?
No, so what happened originally is in about 2000, I set up my first bridging finance company.
Okay.
The bridging finance space was really just opening up. And I was, in all honesty, I was running a much bigger business than I'm running today. And everything was wonderful until we hit an period called 2008, which was the
Yeah, I
great
know that one.
financial crash. And I think it's fair to say that bridging finance or anyone in a lending capacity, it was most like the worst possible business you could be in at that time. It was the eye of the storm, and that was a super tough time. And I'm happy to discuss it, but I got through that, and then eventually, about a year later, I then I wound that company down, and then I set up FBSE in 2009, having come through a pretty torrid time.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that was for an awful lot of reasons and for an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
So, so the business itself, so FBSE was set up in 2009.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then with regards to the journey that you've got for the last, say, 15 years,
Yeah.
just give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the highs and lows and the trials and
Well,
tribulations.
I'm pleased to say that, I mean, to be honest with you, apart from 2008, my business career has been pretty successful and it's generally worked out pretty well. I'm not saying you haven't had aggro and problems along the way, because that is part of being in business. But I started off very, with nothing really. Obviously some contacts and a lot of experience because I'd been in it before. And we gradually built the business up, but it's not as big a business as it was before, and that's partially intentionally, but it had to be even more niche because the market had evolved enormously. And to be relevant, we needed to, as you asked me before, we needed to offer something different. And the fact that we lend on a lot of different asset classes, types of property,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of flexibility in the types of loan that we can offer. We're certainly not exclusive in offering those products, but it means there's a lot less competition in those areas, which as a smaller business, the one thing I understand about business is making money and making a profit, and I'm very profit focused, not turnover focused.
Yeah.
And so I could see that we could generate good margins in this area because there were not as many people in that space. Whereas a lot of the market, which is in the bridging finance space, is a volume industry, which a lot of it works in extremely tight margins. And unless you're going to generate significant volumes, which I wasn't looking to do for various reasons, you need a much bigger headcount, you need a lot more expensive people, a lot more sophisticated technology, all the things that go with it. That wasn't where I was looking to be. And I'd also had quite a lot of scars I was taking with me, having got out of what I'd been through.
Yeah.
So I could see that we could run a nice, smaller, tight, low overhead operation, which if we got it right, would be very profitable. Unfortunately, it's worked out that way.
Well, that's fantastic news, and it's good to hear that you've got that success, especially after, like you say, the nosedive that a lot of us experienced in
Yeah,
2008. So that's
yeah,
really good to hear. Well, thanks for that, Sharon. I mean, looking forward then, Dorian, what would you
yeah.
say? What are your plans for, say, the next 12 months or so, and what sort of challenges do you think you're going to face as a business?
Well, look, we're obviously a well-established operator in our space now. We're not a massive player, but we're well established and we've got a good solid foundation. So the thing about the bridging finance from a business perspective is if you make you've got loans on your books, but they're short-term loans. So what happens is you have quite a lot. It's a cycle. It moves around. So you complete a loan, and then within 6 months to 18 months, sometimes 2 years, it will get repaid. So you've got to replenish that. So you first of all, you want to at least stay as you are, and hopefully you grow as well. So we're looking to do that, and we're hoping to do that. It's not easy to do that. It's a very, very competitive space. Even we're in a niche area that there are so many companies in our space now. But the object, yeah, is hopefully to continue sensible growth. I mean, to be honest with you, if we keep it as it is, I'll be honest, I'm very happy. We're at that level where, you know, we're very happy. And as you can tell, I'm not like at the start of my career. I'm more at the mature end of my career. So you have different goals and different strategies when you get to different stages in your life. But it's great. I love working. I really enjoy it. It works well. And yeah, just keep that going, hopefully expand it, but making sure we do the right business, because with this business, you know, if you do the wrong business, it can be very painful. So
Absolutely.
it's quality, not quantity as well.
I think that's right, and you've made some really key points there. And I know you mentioned it earlier as well, was just making sure that you've got that profit. That's the key thing to focus on, and that cash coming into the
Profit and
business.
cash are in all the business I'm involved in, absolutely
Yeah,
fundamental. Really believe it.
that's some really good sound advice there. So thank you very much. I wouldn't expect anything less from a chartered accountant.
No, well, there you go. I've been out of practice for a long time though. This might be getting a bit rusty.
Brilliant. So moving on to yourself then,
Yeah.
Dorian, as the business owner, what would you
Yeah.
say, what's been, I know it's probably difficult, but what would you say has been your biggest lesson to date that really, stands out for you?
Well, I think without doubt for me, my biggest lesson was when I went through my most difficult times. I mean, like for a lot of people, when things are going well and everything's hunky-dory, you know, it's lovely and we can all do that. But when things are really tough and your back's against the wall and everything is wrong, particularly when the world is imploding, that was an incredible tough time. And I think, you know, what I experienced that, you know, challenged me to my limits. I would absolutely say that, because one of the downsides of not having, you know, other partners or other directors is it all falls on you.
Yeah,
And you're in out of your comfort zone and dealing with circumstances that you haven't really dealt with before. So you kind of have to kind of keep that resilience, which I think you need in business. Anybody I think who's successful and particularly started a business from scratch, I think you have to have resilience, you have to have focus, you need to realize what is important, what isn't. You have to make, you know, clear, your decision making has got to be right. You have to sometimes make very difficult and hard decisions. I mean, at the time I had to effectively mothball my whole business. I had about 12 employees who'd worked with me a long time, worked really hard, really good, and I had to let a lot of them go, and that is very, very difficult. But I knew that's what I had to do. You know, I had to stop lending, which was a tough decision, which
yeah.
I had to do. And then I had to unravel an unbelievable nightmare mess. And that's not easy either, where you've got a lot of external parties, banks, investors. You know, it's difficult, but you find out what you're all about in those situations.
Absolutely, and I think that's key. I mean, you mentioned there are a few things that really jump out, and thanks again for the share, Dorian. But I've even written them down. Three things that stood out, or the three words that I've written down that
Mm,
really stood out, and they're quite a common theme in the
mm,
conversations on the podcast that I do. The first one you mentioned was resilience.
mm.
Absolutely. I think that that's sort of
Yeah,
pretty much number one most of the
yeah,
time when I'm speaking to
yeah,
business owners. And
yeah,
then the other two, which seem to go quite hand in hand, quite nicely as well,
mm,
is focus and clarity.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. I think whether you're building a business in good times or bad, you know, if you haven't got a clear strategy, if you haven't got a vision, if you haven't got a plan, it's a much harder. You've got much more chance, I think, of achieving your objectives if you've got that thought out. You know, you need to think where you're going. You know, sometimes if you're in a great business and it's going well, maybe it can just happen. But if you're going to grow that business, you then got to think, how am I going to grow this business? What do I need to do it? Personnel, technology, network, whatever. I mean, there's so many other things that you need. I mean, I see business very much like a jigsaw puzzle, and it's very much making sure at various stages you've got the right pieces of the jigsaw in place. I mean, I think that's is a simple way of putting it together, but I think that's a pretty good rationale.
Yeah, I love that. I see business like a big jigsaw puzzle. I'm loving that. I'm using that as well.
No
Fantastic.
no royalty on that one.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay. So humour me if you will, Dorian. We're going to go back in time, though. We're going to go into a time machine, whatever, whether it's a DeLorean, I don't
I hope my memory goes back that far.
know. So we're going to go back in time, you and I, and we're going to go and visit an 18-year-old Dorian.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now you
yeah.
get to give yourself one piece of advice, one golden nugget. What would
Mm.
it be?
God, one. Wow. I think overall, I think if you want to go into business, I can't say in one, but I think you've got to make sure that whatever you're going to do, there's a demand for what you want to do. As you asked me before, what are you doing? Either you've got something completely new and you're confident there's a market for it, or if you're doing something which other people are doing and you're going to do it better, what are you doing better for there to be a reason why that business is going to work? But at the same time, I would say to that 18-year-old Dorian, if you're going to go into this, you need to understand this is not going to be easy. It's not about just seeing, which I think a lot of people do, the success stories and the winners and what all the trappings that brings. There is a lot of hard work and, as you say, ups and downs and difficult times to overcome. If for most people, maybe not all, if you want to hope to get to realize your dreams and build that business.
Wow,
That's what I think.
you put that so eloquently. I love that. If only we had the time machine, eh?
If only, you're right. If you knew what you knew now, eh?
Hey, yeah, how many times have I said that to myself?
No, I think a
Um,
lot of people do that.
Great share though. And I mean, Dorian, what I really want to know is
Mm,
what is it that inspires you? You know, what is it that puts that fire in your belly to
mm.
sort of get you to do with passion what you do
Yeah.
every day?
So I think the answer to that is I was very lucky. I was brought up in a really safe, secure, loving family environment. And my dad had his own business. He was in the fashion business, but worked extremely hard. And he had some good times, but he also had some not great times. But a lot of times, although we did okay, lived in not, money was when money's tight at home, money was tight at home.
Yeah,
And I went to a grammar school and I mixed with a lot of people, not all by a long way, but quite a lot who lived a very, a great life. So it opened my eyes to that. And being honest, as a kid, and you see that, and I thought, do you know what? I'd like some of that. And that was part of it. And I think as you get older and you get married, you got kids, obviously you want to do the best you can, as most people do for them. So it's a combination of those two factors, really, which I think helped.
yeah. No, I think that's some really sort of good value there, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of our viewers and listeners. So thanks again for that share. So, Dorian, we're going to start wrapping things up now.
Mhm.
So, people are going to want to find out more about you and they're going to want to find out more about your business.
Yeah.
Um, so, what's going to be the best way for them to do that? I mean, your website, or are you on
Yeah,
LinkedIn?
I
Or...
think if anyone's interested, and we're obviously if anyone's got any, is looking at funding or thinks that we might be able to help, and we're very upfront. If it's not for us, or we think they'd be better off going elsewhere, we will say that to them. But www.fbsefinance.com is our website.
Yep,
It's pretty informative as to what we do, and there's our contact details on there. So if anyone is interested, by all means, please make contact, and happy to chat.
fantastic. And I'm sure they will. So, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on the show, Dorian.
Thank you for having me, and good luck to everyone who is starting or building their business. It's if you can make it happen, it's great.
Absolutely. That's sound advice. Well, for those of you watching and listening, that is a wrap. That's the Business Spotlight. We'll see you all again very soon. Take care. Bye for now.